Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about anxious, preoccupied attachment style individuals and whether they can maintain a friendship after a breakup or after a relationship. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why this can or cannot happen, so stay tuned. And I'll tell you about some of the different dynamics and situations where it can work better than others. And then some important things to keep in mind if you find yourself in this position, either as the anxious preoccupied or as the potential, ex turning friend of the anxious preoccupied. So before I dive into all of this, we are doing our Black Friday sale for lifetime memberships, a couple other little bonus surprises in there. So check that out. I'll put a link in the description box below. And this will be lifetime memberships for full access to the whole school. So this means literally like every webinar, every group event, social event, every mastermind group, every course that's available, all the workbooks, all the things that are in there as this huge sort of little living organism we have inside the school now with all these different sort of parts and exciting features. So check that out. And of course, we're still doing our With You in the meantime also. So link to both of those things in the description below. So this is a really unique situation when it comes to friendships. I find that anxious, preoccupied individuals often want to have a friendship after a breakup, but sometimes there's this very strong downside where they don't even necessarily consciously recognize how much this is preventing them from moving on. And part of the reason that anxious, preoccupied individuals will want to maintain a friendship after a breakup is usually because in sort of the lingering deeper parts of the subconscious mind, they are still hoping that things can turn around and something can work out. And so, they often want to be able to just be friends, but there can be this underlying hint of romantic connection that can be difficult. And this can be a huge barrier to healing and to really developing a relationship to yourself. And so, I often recommend to anxious, preoccupied individuals, if you want to rekindle a friendship, it's best to really go no contact or to take some time for yourself first, because otherwise it's going to make it more difficult to move on. And sometimes over the years, I've seen anxious, preoccupied individuals, be in friend relationships with somebody, kind of still having or carrying those background emotional feelings. And then the other person might be better at shutting down their feelings or moving on or having the relationship to themselves. And sometimes then eventually that partner will get into a new relationship and the ex will get into a new relationship. And then here's the anxious preoccupied person who didn't realize the relationship dynamic to this friend was hurting them the whole time because they hadn't really gone no contact, hadn't really set up those boundaries, taken the time into the relationship to themselves to feel really whole again before returning to, strike up a potential friendship. And then they almost go through the breakup a second time around when their ex gets into a new relationship. And this isn't that uncommon. So it's very important to recognize that that's a potential. And so number one, it can create a big barrier to moving on. Number two, if you move on, if you're in a relationship, unless you've done that healing work for yourself first and really felt like you took some time separate from that person, again, because anxious, preoccupied individuals tend to have such a high need for emotional connection and romantic relationships and approval in those romantic relationships and affection and attention and that dynamic, because part of their subconscious imprinting has put them in a position where they're out of relationship to themselves. So then what happens is somebody comes into, your life, and even if that person is now an ex, if they're back around a little bit, your subconscious mind is like, well, geez, that's my source still of connection, of affection, of attention. And so it can still rely on that person for a lot of romantic needs, or at least needs that could be affiliated with romantic connection. And it can make it confusing for you at a subconscious level if you are the anxious person. And so what can then happen is if you do get into a new relationship at some point, you can still have these like lingering feelings there quite easily. Whereas if you really get into relationship to yourself, if you're really filling up your own buckets of needs, then that person doesn't have the same weight over you. That person doesn't have the same mental, emotional, relationship like power over you at a subconscious level because they're not such a big source of these needs. And so it can create healthier boundaries for a friendship to actually take place. It's not a friendship, but really has these underlying or undertones of romance still alive in them. And so that's really important because if you're going to be in a new relationship too, I always say to people, it doesn't, if you are somebody who participates in like monogamous relationships, then you're sort of like putting yourself in a position where it's like imagine you're like investing in something, but then you're sabotaging it at the same time. It doesn't really work. And so we want to be clear, like what boundaries do we need in a friendship, or what healthy dynamics can we have? What do we need to commit to, where if we're going to invest in this new relationship, we don't have this old relationship distracting us or confusing us, or something like that. And we can really, really invest our romantic emotional energy in a healthy way. And then of course we can still have a friendship, but maybe with just some clearer boundaries if you find that you're in a position where you haven't really fully moved on. And then another big piece here too is that obviously, as long as there's any false hope alive, maybe if both parties are not in a relationship, then it can prevent the anxious, preoccupied individual from getting into relationship with themselves. They can still be trying to derive their needs from the outside in, which obviously is a huge stunt to the growth experience and the healing experience. And so it's really important that anxious, preoccupied individuals, more than anybody, take a little bit of time post breakup to really be in relationship to themselves. And I often recommend no contact the most for anxious, preoccupied people, because it's a way I'm like really honing in on that relationship to yourself and getting that time to properly self-reflect, to properly meet some of your own needs, to properly do some reprogramming and healing work around core wounds, to start having your boundaries, to start noticing your own feelings and processing and self-soothing yourself. And so a lot of these dynamics are really important. But obviously, if there's some external person that you hunger for, or hunger for them to meet your needs, that can act as a huge distraction to all of that and can sort of put a pin in the healing process a little bit, which ultimately you have to remember impacts future potential relationships as well. And really, truly, the more we are in a healthy relationship to ourselves, the more every other relationship and part of our life benefits, including our career, our relationship to money, our relationship to our mental, emotional well being, spiritual well being, all these different components. So they're all very much intertwined, and it's important to be aware. But the only exception I would say here is if you've been in a very long term friendship, you kind of dipped your toes into the dating pond with this person, and then you realize, not going to work really, and then you have a clear set of boundaries established where, maybe you dated for 1 or 2 months, you were friends for 10 years, and you're like, oh, it's not going to work. Then in that case, it might be okay because that person really has so many programmed associations to you as being your friend. And so you have to be the judge of that. Is there a romantic undertone there for you? Or are you making sure there's a purely platonic undertone? And if you are able to maintain that, then you can assess, is this preventing me from healing or being in a healthy, happy relationship elsewhere in the future? And you get to ask yourself that question and be the best judge of that. And the other thing you can look at too is, are there healthy boundaries established? If there is somebody you want to stay friends with because maybe they were a friend before, you were dating, it didn't work, you just have to reassess that. Maybe take some time, go no contact for a few weeks, a few months, and then ask yourself, what are healthy boundaries in this dynamic for me? Maybe a friend I see once a month, and shoot some text back and forth with here and there, and we stay in contact and we have that friendship, but it's not somebody I'm seeing every day or seeing every weekend or something like that. So those are all important pieces to evaluate. I hope that all makes sense. Thank you so much for being here and for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're getting a lot of value out of this channel, and I will see you in the next video.